Are star ratings broken in Football Manager 2022? Well, honestly, no, they aren't. But if you don't understand what they are, where they come from, and why they can change, then it might certainly feel that way. Now, today we'll take an in-depth look at star ratings and cover all of those three things and more. And by the end of this video, you'll fully understand what star ratings are and you'll be able to impress all of your friends. Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Anders and today we are looking at star ratings on FM22. We'll cover exactly what they mean, probably bust a few myths along the way. We'll go through where they come from and why they can change throughout a season. Now to start, let's cover a few things that star ratings are not. They are not the be-all and end-all for player ratings, and they are not the equivalent of an overall that you'll find in FIFA or on other sports games, but they are heavily influenced by a number of factors that we will cover in greater detail in today's video. There are also three different coloured stars that you need to understand as well, which all mean slightly different things, but again, we'll cover those a little bit later on in this video. Now, to start with, where can we find star ratings? Now, the two most obvious places are on your own team's squad page and in your scouting centre. From there, if you go to any player, you can view either their coach report or scout report, depending on which player is there, whether they're signed to your club or not. And you'll also find star ratings in your development centre as well, where you can see the ratings for all of your youth prospects and potential wonder kids. But before we go any further, I'd just like to mention that I'm using my current day Blackburn Rovers save to demonstrate star ratings for today's video. If you like the look of anything from this save, please check out the European Ewood series here on the channel. A playlist should be linked up here somewhere, and if you just scroll below, you'll find your new best friend, the subscribe button. If you give that a press along with a like button, you'll unlock some beautiful content here on the channel and never miss any future videos from myself. Now back to star ratings then, and you'll notice that you get two sets of star ratings for each player, one for current ability and one for potential ability, and the ratings go from half a star all the way up to the famed full 5 stars, with a little caveat or two that we'll touch on later on. One myth that we can bust immediately is that these ratings bear no relation to the league that you are in. They bear no relation to the rest of the country or even the rest of the game world. No, this scale is completely relative to the club that you are managing and nowhere else. It's completely self-contained. And that means that a 5-star player, if you're in League 2, might only be a single-star player in the Championship. And this is something that you should pay particular attention to if you are riding up and rising up the leagues and rapidly improving your squad as you go. If you remember that 5-star potential youth candidate from 3 seasons ago, he's now just shown as just a 3-star player at his max. Well, that doesn't mean that the Messiah has necessarily developed poorly, but if your squad has improved, it might just mean that he was never really the Messiah ever. It's all relative, so a great player when you're further down the leagues will still be that same quality of player, maybe even better, but he won't be a great player relative to your new squad strength. It gets a little bit more complicated as well, as these star ratings can change depending on which coach or member of staff you have responsible for providing the reports. Now, to check this, you need to head over to the staff responsibility page and have a look which staff member you've got selected. If you go to the staff page, click responsibilities and then head down to advice and reports, you can see here that I've got my assistant manager, Chris Doigu. I think he's got 15 and 14 or 14 and 15 in the two attributes that we're touching on here, the judging player ability and judging player potential. Ideally, you want the member of staff with the best attributes for these two categories. And have a little play. See if you change things up, how that simple change can skew your view on the world and change someone who's a 4-star in one person's opinion to a 3-star in another, or a 5-star. It could all change depending on the attributes of the staff member you are asking to provide this advice. Now, it's been widely known that these two attributes are important for scouts to be able to provide solid feedback on potential purchasers, but you should also try and ensure that you have a coach or an assistant manager or someone who appears in this drop-down list here that features with a high number in both of these categories. So you want an attribute of around 15 for both of them to get some solid reports. Depending on your level, obviously a 5 might be a higher attribute in this, depending how far down the pyramid you are. Particularly, this is important if you use star ratings quite regularly to guide you throughout the game. Now, earlier I mentioned that star ratings go from half a star to 5 stars, and this is true mostly. The traditional gold stars sit on this scale, but there are two cases of something slightly different. So if you head over to the development centre and have a look at some of your youth prospects, you might notice that some silver stars are knocking around and just trying to confuse you a little bit. In most cases, these will feature as silver stars in current ability and gold stars in potential ability. If you've got silver stars in potential ability, the guy's probably not got much potential. The silver star scale essentially is used when these youth players would otherwise be showing as half a gold star. It's used as a way to further differentiate between younger players, and it disappears as they get older or develop into better players. So if we can see here on the development centre, if we order by ability and scroll down, the players with silver stars are ranked below the single gold star players, and then once again they're ranked on the half a star to 5 star scale. I'm thinking if it's a 5 silver star, it's probably going to show as a full gold star, but I've never tested it. Let me know in the comments down below if that is the case. The other case we mentioned is when you see a player with white stars, and this is seen in a couple of instances. So first, it's in youth players once again, and we can see some examples here if we stay on the development centre. For these youth players, this happens in the potential ability range, and essentially it shows a range of ability where this player will end up, but we just don't know yet. We don't know enough about this player. There's some level of uncertainty, and it is that bit of uncertainty that once again disappears as the player gets older. But if you've got a player with a 4 to 5 star potential, the true value will be somewhere within that range, but we won't know until he gets older and the view firms up. Now, speaking of the unknown, these white ranges also show up in early scouting reports. So if you've got a low percentage of knowledge on a player, you'll get a range here as well, and this goes away if you scout the player more or to full knowledge. Now, obviously, this is caveated by the fact if they're still young, you'll still have a star range on potential ability no matter how intensely you scout the player, because if you don't know the full potential of your own players, no matter how much you scout someone, you're still going to have that range as well. So it's worth bearing in mind that if you see a player that's got a really wide range, you need to scout them more or just wait until they develop to show their true potential. Now, a lot of what we've touched on shows that a player's star rating is not purely down to their skills and ability on the pitch. They are heavily impacted by those around them. Basically, if you go onto any player's coach report or scout report, anything that features in the pros and cons section will factor into this star rating metric. So the ratings are influenced by a player's form in matches, a player's potential performance in training, their general value to the team, so whether they fit a specific squad registration or eligibility criteria. All of these factors and a hell of a lot more impact in their relative overall value to the team and thus impact a player's star rating. So if you get a player who pops a new nationality or is now eligible to play in the nation you're playing in, you might see a bump to their star rating. So if they suddenly tick one of the squad registration criteria, you might get a half-star bump just out of nowhere, and the player is still the same level of player. He's just now more value to the team. Now, star ratings themselves are a very, very volatile beast that we've touched on, even barely touched the surface, and they will fluctuate throughout the whole season. But if you know what feeds into them and what doesn't, they can ultimately provide a great at-a-glance overview of your squad, and I definitely recommend using them in conjunction with understanding your squad and your players' attributes and what's needed to play in a specific role that you might want them to play in. It feeds into the overall knowledge base that you can use whilst playing this game. Don't just focus solely on star ratings, because you're bound to be misled and go down an alley where you're playing someone who you think is a great player, but ultimately there's something in that metric that's skewing the star rating and is not as good as someone you might be overlooking. I find that it's a great use for them is on the squad depth chart. So if you head over to that screen, it'll give you an idea of areas in your formation that you might be weak in, and you can change the formation around and have a look at which other formations you might be more suited to, where your squad is probably better suited. There's more strength in depth in areas, and it's also great on the tactics page as well. We've not really touched on that, but it gives a quick view of whether a player is well suited to a particular role that you're playing them in without having to jump back and forth to their page and change the role around and see how the attributes look that are suited to the role. It gives a good overview there. And overall, I think that star ratings are a great tool to have in your tool belt, but they shouldn't be the only tool to use, and they certainly aren't broken any more than they ever have been. Now, I hope that you found this video to be useful and informative, and most importantly, I hope that you now have a better understanding of star ratings on Football Manager 2022. Right, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Well, hey, you've made it to the end of the video, and hang on, it's a subscribe button. Tap on this, even if you've done it already, just try it, see what happens. And then if you're hanging around, have a look. Have a look at these. One of these. Check out some of this amazing content. You won't regret it. I'll see you next time.